Alumni and Career Services webinar series. My name is Bree, like the cheese, and I'm a career coach at the Career Center. And before I get started, I just wanted to let you know that there will be a link posted in the chat for feedback near the end of the webinar, so we greatly appreciate that. Any kind of feedback you have for future webinars going forward. And Danny will be our tech guy. So if there's any technical issues, please chat with Danny. Please keep your video and your audio muted, and then you can use the chat box to ask questions or to add comments. So without further ado, we would like to introduce the Designing Your Work Life, specifically focusing on problem finding. So this summer, we've been doing a lot of work around the New York Times best-selling book called Designing Your Life. And today, our webinar digs into designing your work life. And this specifically will be focusing on problems that pop up in the workplace and ways that we can readdress them. And so the material that we're focusing on is from the same authors, Dave Evans and Bill Burnett, and it's their new book called Designing Your Work Life, and I have a little picture of that up in the top. And these concepts have been tested and validated by white coat researchers at Ivy League schools for its efficacy and validation, and have been proven to transform lives. So to kick us off, I've got two questions for you, and you can answer them in the chat, or you can just answer them to yourself. But one, are you, or have you in the past, felt disengaged from your job? And if so, here's a sigh of relief. You're not alone, because actually 68% of the US worker population is in the same boat as you. And my second question is, are you ready to quit your job? So if you've answered yes to either of these questions, I'm going to ask you respectfully to stop and wait, because hopefully this workshop and webinar is going to provide you with additional insight into how to control your work life when it comes to the day-to-day of designing and creating a work life that's best suited and best fitted for you. You know, because we know that in COVID, our jobs, they might be seeming a little mundane at this point in time, right? They might seem a little routine, a little Groundhog Day-esque. You know, we may feel disconnected from our boss, you know, and from our team. So maybe there's this sense of feeling underappreciated. Or maybe we feel like we're getting overworked because we're working from home and we're not going anywhere. And there's this responsibility to be at the computer nonstop and to have that green little circle illuminated, right? And above all, right, of all the above scenarios, these make us feel stuck, like gum on our shoe, when it comes to workplace concerns and the control that we have. So our goal, hopefully this afternoon, is to provide you with some tools that make you from feeling stuck to feeling like you're in flow. So today we're going to talk through getting unstuck through this concept of reframing. We'll introduce a method of goal setting called Set the Bar Low. And then finally, we're going to go through a tool that's effective at zooming in on what engages us, energizes us, and brings us flow so that we can hopefully attain more of that in the workplace. So in design thinking, and for those of you that don't know how to, for those of you that aren't familiar, hi Riho, I just saw you in the chat. Design thinking is a methodology that's generally applied to products and services like Sony and Instagram and Apple in order to predict what these products and services will do. And in design thinking, you're also gathering as much data about these products and services in order to reproduce and replicate them, because products and services are replicable. Okay, well, what about us? What about human lives? How can we do that? Well, there's no predicting our future lives. I wish I could take a glass, bowl in front of me and hold my hand over it and tell you where you'll be in 10 years. Unfortunately, I can't. And there's no data on our lives and what we could do unless we try things out, right? And through our own experiences. So human-centered design thinking is all about focusing on brainstorming, on prototyping, which is another word for experimenting. We try things out, we see what sticks, we get curious, and we collaborate. And so in design thinking, one of the designer tools used and applied to everyday life stickies is this notion of reframing. So reframing is not this, just be positive, just be grateful, everything will be better, right? Peppy cheerleader type of talk, and it's also not this whole, well, make the best out of it, right? Piece of advice, and which isn't necessarily bad, but if you're just making the best out of a situation to get by, then you're not really addressing, right, what's at the core of causing you to feel so bad, so icky, so sticky, and so stuck. Right? You're still ultimately in that bad situation. So reframing, rather, is this concept of rearranging how you look at a situation with a new perspective, with a new outlook, in a way that is actionable and attackable. I'm not sure if that's a word, but I think go with me on that. But in a way that's actionable, you can do something about it. Now, if a company is, discriminating against you or asking you to do something that's immoral or illegal, then you need to Forrest Gump it and run out of there. But, if it is the hard knocks of life, life lessons like culture or boredom or disconnect, then hang in there, right? Because breaking through these kinds of walls will only add to your grit and to your resilience, and ultimately figuring out what you don't want to do and what you don't like to do in order to figure out what you do want to do and what and where you're going in that. So as a recap, again, reframing is an actionable approach to readdress a problem that keeps you feeling immobile or feeling like there's gum under your shoe. So an example of this is, I'm stuck. And a reframe of this would be, I'm never stuck because I can generate a lot of ideas. Another example, if you are successful, you'll be happy. Let's reframe that. True happiness comes from designing a life that works for you. Your degree determines your career, right? 3/4 of college grads don't actually end up working in a career related to their majors, believe it or not. Another one, to be happy, I have to make the right choice, right? There's no right choice. There's only good choosing. So let's look at 2 common scenarios that we see in the workplace often. And let's look at Hannah. So Hannah's on the left of our screen. Hannah loves her colleagues. She loves her work environment and loves what the company that she works for stands for. But her tasks are becoming really annoying, really mundane, and she's finding herself to become burnt out because of that. She's feeling disengaged, she's feeling bored, she wants to leave. All right, let's look at Denise. Denise is on the right-hand side. So Denise loves her work, but she hates that her boss never gives her recognition or acknowledgement on her work. Right? It only seemed like she was being given feedback when she was doing something terribly wrong and royally messing up. She's about to quit. Right? So these are 2 examples of problems that are problematic. And so we're not going to focus on the feeling and the sentiment of the people that are expressing these concerns so much as we're going to look at the problem with the way the problem is stated. That's kind of a tongue twister. We're going to look at the problem, the way the problem is stated, right? And how that is contributing to this negative mindset, right? So these types of worries and fears and concerns framed in this kind of statement creates a barrier that's almost impossible to get around. Stated this way, these kinds of problems, they're essentially impossible to bust. They're impossible to action on, to move forward from, right? Without sinking your ship or setting fire to the house or ruining relationships or missing out on potentials, okay? So let's put this reframe to the work, to the test. If we switch the way the problem is stated and we reframe it, it would look something like this. So this is for Hannah on the left. I love where I work and who I work with, but the work I'm doing isn't as fulfilling. How might I bring fulfillment into the workplace? Maybe Hannah taps into the things that makes her tick and flow, right? Do you speak another language, and can you do, can you maybe use that to your advantage and do some interpretation work, right? Do you have design skills? Are you a visionary, right? Find people, talk to them, showcase your skills, and you're potentially on your way to a new role. Okay, let's look at Denise. Denise is on the right-hand side again, right? So I love my work, but I never get recognition from my boss on the great things I do. How might I find recognition and feedback from sources other than my boss, right? So it takes the pressure of other people and external factors influencing it and putting it back on us, on the internal aspect of it, right? With just a switch of perspective, you're now posed with this question and this mindset that's actionable, right? For Hannah, maybe after some reflection, she knows that she enjoys designing training materials. So maybe she goes to the talent development or HR department and prototypes conversations and experiences towards helping them out. For Denise, maybe she puts down a list of mentors and other department heads and people that she works with for feedback and for collaboration and connection, right? So in both cases, you're turning that negative into an actionable perspective. I'm going to say that a lot on this webinar if you haven't caught it already, while relieving the pressure of, oh, I need to find a new job, to, hey, I don't have to resign. I can just redesign where I'm at, right? Okay, cool, Bree. So now we have an actionable problem. Now what do? Well, the author suggests moving into a mindset of setting the bar low and clearing it when it comes to solving our problems, attaining goals, right? So what does that mean? Why are we setting the bar low? Well, according to research, 90% of New Year's Eve resolutions fail, and about 2/3 of diets fail. Why? Well, behavior change is really tough. And this was actually studied at Stanford's design school on how people try way too hard, way too fast, and initially give way too much when they're trying to accomplish, X, Y, and Z goal. And when that happens, we tend to face burnout rather quickly, right? And then we fail. And then we become defeated and we feel deflated. And then we usually just give up, right? And the pounds maybe creep back up on us, or in this case, right, our work scenario, we stay stuck in an unhappy job and an unhappy situation. Why do we think people decide to stay? Because leaving requires a quote unquote big change, right? And either the change seems too big and too overwhelming to chew off, right? Or when this change was attempted, we failed, right? And it didn't turn out the way that we expected it to. And so we stay. And instead of these drastic, huge leaps and bounds to enact change, the authors talk about this method of setting the bar low and clearing it. So at conception, this philosophy of setting the bar low was derived from psychology studies that suggest taking small, actionable steps is the best way to establish a behavior or a habit, whereas the reverse, right, if we take these huge leaps and bounds and big steps, can actually have detrimental effects, and you're just going to roll back down the hill. So for example, let's put this in layman's terms. Let's take a New Year's Eve resolution of learning a new language before the year ends, maybe Spanish. So most people, what they do in this situation, and science has proven this, research, is they'll go out, they'll spend loads of money on, Rosetta Stone and downloading this application and working with this teacher, or they overcommit their time initially. They get sidetracked because other things pop up and we're not realistically, setting our goal. We lose momentum of the pace, and then we bail because we feel like we're behind, right, on that goal. So instead of overcommitting and becoming overzealous, set micro goals, right? So this is what the whole set the bar low and clear it method is all about, right? So set yourself up for achievement. Open your calendar and block out an hour each day, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes a day, if that's more realistic to achieve X, Y, and Z goal. Maybe if you're learning a language, you do it during your commute and you actually put that on your calendar. You do it during your lunch break. You do it before bed. Maybe instead of reading a book for the next 2 weeks in your free time, you switch that up with learning this new language or working on whatever skill it might have been, right? And the key here is you do this for 2 weeks, right? You prototype this, you experiment with it, you see how this works. Is this goal achievable? Are you setting yourself up for achievement, or are you setting yourself up for failure, right? And as you consider this, and whatever goal it might be, personally or professionally, ask yourself, what would make learning this language, we'll just fill in the blank with that, more enjoyable than maybe just an application? Maybe listening to music in Spanish, maybe watching a show in Spanish with subtitles on, right? Get creative. You're not limited, right? You want to run a marathon? Who says you need to break yourself into running 5 miles a day to prepare? Start small, 5,000 steps a day for 2 weeks, then you bump it up, right? Incorporate other physical activity. So a part of goal setting is figuring out how it fits into your life, but also making that enjoyable. And after 2 weeks of successfully meeting this goal, this is another important scientific fact, is treat yourself. Maybe a little mini celebration or a cookie or whatever it might be, that maybe you deprive yourself of for 2 weeks so that you've got your mindset on 2 goals now. Because this is an important process of goal setting in that it gives your brain a little blast of dopamine when you reward yourself for successfully making a change. Then, after 2 weeks, bump your goal up. Maybe instead of 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, it becomes 45 minutes a day, right? And so on. Maybe you switch from learning that language from an application and you switch to listening to music or then to watching a TV show. Now, how does this relate to the workforce? So if you are, for example, looking for a job, right, commit to applying to 1 job every day or however much time you have in that, but thoroughly and thoughtfully for 2 weeks, right? And if you get that job, you get the interview, still apply, right? Then bump it up after that from 2 weeks. Maybe you do 2 jobs a day or whatever may suit you best. Granted, you're in a time frame, so maybe you want to add in a little bit more, but we have a tendency when we get desperate for a job to apply to whatever's out there, right? Not, we don't customize our resumes and we don't customize our cover letters and we're applying to apply mindlessly. So be diligent if this is a skill or a goal that you want to work on, right? And be diligent in your research of the company and why you want to really work there. What is it that they have that's congruent to you that you could match them at, and vice versa, right? Be purposeful in your revisions and just in your overall wants and goals for that. If it's a current work thing, maybe you're in the finance department and you're thinking about making a switch to the marketing department, right? But you can't go back to school and you don't want to go back to school. So what could you do? Well, there's lots of, master classes out there, lots of graduate certifications that you could take that are self-paced, right? And commit to that, baby steps, right? There's several ways to reach your goal, not just one direct path. And the objective in this is stay gentle and be patient to yourself, right? We all have slip-ups. We all, encounter one, and that's okay. But that might mean then you've bitten off more than you can chew and your mouth's a little full and you got to digest that first. So modify your target and then pick up from where you left off, right? And then the other objective, right, again, is it's progress, not perfection, right? One suggestion I will caution you with is that it's easy to bump up our goals, right? We hit 2 weeks, we hit 4 weeks. It's easy when that 6-week time frame comes in to just cram in stuff. We think we're like Mighty Mouse or Johnny Bravo and we're ready to just take on more. Stay gentle, little bites, slow and steady wins the race, right? So what I would like you to do, I know this is, you might be in your car, you might be at your desk, and this might be something you could do a little bit later on, but I want you to take a sticky note or the back of a scratch piece of paper and write down a big goal that you have, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, and write it down. Maybe it's I want more responsibility in my job. Maybe it's I want to exercise more. I want to start a mindfulness practice. I want to find a job that means something to me. So go ahead, I'll give you about 30 seconds, maybe 15. Now I want you to write down a clear and measurable description of your eventual goals. For instance, I regularly, so I'm thinking about Bree maybe in 6 months. I regularly bike 10 miles a week, right? If maybe mindfulness is something you want in your practice, I meditate 15 minutes a day regularly, right? If you want to eat more healthy, I eat vegetables with every meal regularly. Okay, so it's a 3-step process. Your goal, what the measurable outcome looks like in the future. Now we're going to creep up on that goal, and that change that you wish to see in your life with a micro goal, right? So what are a few mini goals that you could commit to in order to make that happen eventually? And you'll plan that into your calendar, and you'll expand that into an 8-week segment. So for example, this is my plan to, my big goal is I would like to bike a triathlon, be a part of a triathlon next summer. So what I'm doing, and I will know if it happens when I'm able to bike 30 miles a day comfortably. So it's going to take me some time. So my micro goals consist of, for the next 2 weeks, I'm committing to biking 2 miles a day. The following 2 weeks, I'm committing to 3 miles a day. Then the following is 4 miles, 5 miles, so on and so forth. Right? So that way I have 8 weeks accounted for, because research says it takes about 8 weeks to establish a new norm. So remember, set the bar low and clear it. Micro mini goals. What's the big goal? What's the measurable outcome you could see your future self doing? And then what are those micro mini goals? And have some accountability, right? Put them, I encourage you to plaster them with sticky notes around your desk, or putting them in your Outlook calendar so that you're reminded every morning at 6 a.m., oh, I got to meditate, or oh, I got to go for that bike ride. And that's your accountability buddy, all right? So the last tool of the webinar that I want to introduce is a tool that the authors have developed, and this is called the Good Work Journal. And this is a simple technique that's built around self-awareness, and it zooms in on what engages you at work, what energizes you at work, and what puts you in a state of flow when you're at work and on the job. So generally, I don't know if this is your experience, it's definitely mine, but generally when asked, I ask people, how's your day, right? Most of the times I hear, fine, good, it was okay, right? And that's it, or I might be the one saying that. Maybe that's me, and I'm telling on myself here a little bit, right? And when we respond in this way, a lot of times it's because there isn't a sense for what is truly going on in our work life and how it's making us feel. We kind of just gloss over it, right? Because it's easy to get comfortable, and it's also easier to get complacent about how we're spending our time, right? Especially if we don't know any better, right? Or if things are cool, or things are fine, or we're just skating by, it's easier to not question. Because what does that mean? That means it's time for a change. That means we gotta get brave and have the courage to take action to move forward. And this scares a lot of people because it's the unknown, right? So this is an exercise that illuminates what is working in our lives and what may not be working in our lives. And the premise of this technique is simple. You record your thoughts, you record your emotions, and you record your behaviors while you're on the job. And then you reflect at the end of the week on what you particularly noticed about your work and your job. And in order to do that, the noticing, right, there's 3 categories, and you can kind of see it here. It's a little blurred there, but there's 3 categories. What did I learn? What did I initiate? And who did I help? So what this does is it specifically and tangibly puts experiences and thoughts on paper. Right? And when that happens, it's not just in our head anymore. We're not just ruminating about it. We're not just dwelling on it. We're not just thinking about it, but we're actually able to see, oh, there's a pattern. Oh, that's an aha moment. I never thought about this. I'm curious about this. Why is this making me, feel so excited and elated? Or why is this maybe draining me? I never thought that. So let's break these categories down a little bit more. So what did I learn category? When you're looking at the what did I learn category, look for small things. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be a new process. It could be a new procedure. It could be a different way of making PowerPoint slides, or it could be something new that you learned about Barbara Jean in human resources, right? And another thing to keep an eye out in all of this is for the things that we're unlearning, right? And this accounts for when you've learned something that you thought was true and it wasn't true. So to feel like your work is working for you, science says that you have to be learning something every day. So do that. Pay attention to what you learn, right? So what did I initiate? That's the second part, the second column. In order to feel like we have autonomy in our jobs, we want to be crafting, we want to be creating, and we want to be implementing new things. And when we satisfy these innate needs, we're able to truly initiate action and change something in a new way. We are intrinsically motivated. And when you get your innate needs met, psychologists say that you feel like you're in more control of your own world. Because we can't rule the world, although I wish we could, right? But we can't rule the world. We can rule our own world, right? So a cool thing is that, when you initiate, smaller things in your job, you generally don't have to ask for permission, right? Pick something small that you can do on your own. Maybe a better protocol for filing, or a better way to look at the spreadsheets and the budgets, right? Maybe you organize a volunteer event for your work at a local animal shelter, right? It's surprising how fulfilling these feel, and it's generally, without a doubt, that these kinds of actions go unnoticed in the workplace, right? So the last column is, who did I help? And there was a Harvard grant study that looked at the science behind service and how helping others actually correlates with a longer and a more fulfilled life. So just as we humans strive for autonomy, right, to control our own worlds in our lives, we also strive for this intrinsic reward, this internal reward of connectedness and of feeling related, AKA being helpful, right? So take notice of these moments, right? Jot them down. And again, these don't have to be grandiose mountaintop, va-va-voom acts of service, right? Small actions count too, right? Maybe filling the printer cartridge with ink or paper, maybe buying donuts for your assistant, maybe putting a thank you, just a little Post-it note like this with a little flower on your colleague's desk and thanking them, or just saying, hey, you're awesome, right? These small, thoughtful acts of kindness put money in the karma bucket in the office, and it's proven to contribute to happiness. Now, that all being said, you want to try this particular exercise at least for a month. And when you notice these small actions, then they're going to lead to grandiose outcomes, right? I like how that is, right? We don't have to do grandiose outcomes for grandiose actions for grandiose outcomes. Small actions, grandiose outcomes, right? And that's going to increase your work satisfaction. And when you reflect, right, which we're going to get into in here just a second, what observations do you notice? Which category of these three has more inserts? Which one has the least amount of inserts, right? Make a plan to increase that column the following week, and how did it make you feel, right? Remember, reframe, set the bar low, clear it, and then reflect, right? So this is really a key process in the reflection phase. And the second part of this exercise after you journal is called the 7th day reflection. Dave and Bill call it the 7th day reflection. And this focuses on the, you could have guessed it, reflection component. And there's 4 simple steps in this. The first one is to retreat. So when you're doing this, usually at the end of the week, maybe on a Sunday, could be morning, afternoon, find a quiet spot where you can comfortably sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Maybe you have a flat surface where you're able to write. And before that, you just close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths. Maybe you do a little bit of a meditation exercise beforehand, right? So that's retreat. Number 2, then you're going to review, right? So keeping your eyes closed, let the last 6 days or 7 days or whatnot flow through your mind's eye and look to 2 or 3 moments that were impactful during your week, that stand out for positive reasons. And careful not to be drawn to the drama or the conflicts or the problems that arose. And if you find yourself doing that, that's okay. Just like in meditation, right? Just be gentle, come back to your breath, come back to the positive moments, stay gentle, and tell yourself, I'll get to that later, right? And let it go. And when you're done with this review, you're going to open your eyes and then you're going to jot down 2 words for each moment that stood out, right? So for instance, productive meetings, helpful neighbor, grateful wife, sloppy puppy dog kisses. Okay, that's 3, but you can go for 3, especially if there's a dog included in there, right? The third step is to reflect. All right, so when you're done with that, you'll look at your list of positive descriptive words and you're going to reflect back on each moment, on each encounter, each experience individually, and you're going to savor them. And if there's one that particularly, piques your interest, that you feel drawn to, journal about it, right? Just a little bit, nothing too long, but enough to capture the experience of what was so fulfilling about that moment. And then the last step is to reinforce and retain. So I am huge on staying in the gratitude. It goes a long way, and it's truly a superpower if it's used on the daily. And one way to express gratitude is to thank the week, right, for these good moments that you've had in spite of any kind of conflictual situations that may have arose in the past 6 days, right? You have a list of 3 or 4 positive things in front of you that stood out. Another way of giving gratitude, and this can tie into your reflection, is you start your day with a gratitude list, 3 things that you're grateful for. And then you end the day with 3 things that you're grateful for. And this will start to cue you in as well when you do your reflection. And when you do, you come back to this kind of what's making me tick, what is so energizing and engaging for me, right? You can share this with your family, with your partner, with your children, right? Invite them to join the mountaintop moments for you that have happened in your life and in your week, right? Instead of just saying, good, fine, the usual, 2, 3, 2, 3. My dad always says, same song, same dance, right? So this exercise is not about the if onlys and the I wishes or pretending in the world. It's about maximizing the moments that happen in your life. And it's easy to get grumpy, and it's easy to see the glass half empty. But when you see it as a glass half full, you're certain to find more fulfillment, more opportunities, more happiness, and more satisfaction. So that being said, that is our finale of the webinar series. And if you're interested in more of these tools, we are offering appointments at the Career Center, and you can reach out to Danny on Danny Pape or myself, and that where we focus on these kinds of tools of exploring and discovering and zooming in and brainstorming in your life. We will definitely have some future webinars incorporating material like this. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I have. If there's any questions, I'm gonna jump to the chat box and see here. Okay, I'm trying to get started on a bullet journal. Any thoughts or tips? So I actually use it's a self journal, and I'm not sure if a bullet journal is the same thing, but it basically, you go through your weeks and you put down what goals you have, what targets you have, what lessons learned, what were some of the wins, right? We want to stay in that positive and thinking about, hey, I got this done. And then you go through and you do different reflections and things like that. So I'm not sure if bullet journal is the same thing, but I absolutely recommend it. The one that I particularly have, as I mentioned, is the self journal. And what's cool is it comes with a calendar that looks like this. Probably can't see that well, but what it is it's 13 weeks of a calendar, and you put your goal on the top of it, and then you just put your different micro goals as you work down. So that's definitely a suggestion, and I hope that answers your question, Brett. Let's see. Any tips for designing a work from home life specifically? Any tips for designing a work from home life? So energy and engagement are 2 critical ways in figuring out what makes us jive and what makes us tick, as we talked about here in the Good Work Journal. So there's a couple of ways you can look at a work from home life. So sequencing and place are two tools that you can use when you're adjusting and you're looking at your energy and your engagement, right? So sometimes it's easy to be home and have chores going on and have dogs that need to get fed and things that need to happen, right? And how do you not get bogged down by that? So I invite you to come into our series with us, because we go into more of this. But one thing we'll do is you might like to sequence out a draining activity, right? So if chores, for instance, is a draining activity for you, you would want to cushion it between some positive and uplifting activities. So for me, chores is a big drainer, might be a little TMI, but meditating is an uplifter for me, as you've probably heard from my speech. And working out is an uplifter. So I will do the Oreo or the sandwich or the ice cream cookie method of a negative, a drainer mixed in with a positive. And also another way you can address that is place. So I'm sure a lot of you have the same notion of, wow, ever since COVID, I feel like I have spent more time in my office than anywhere else. So maybe instead of answering emails and having some work meetings, maybe instead of your office, go into your garden, right? Or go into a different room of the house, or go on your front porch, right? Maybe you go for a quick walk before any of those types of things. So those are just a couple of methods. And again, we do dive into this with some more appointment series. So if you want to get specific, definitely reach out to Danny or myself, and we'd love to walk you through all of this. Okay, I don't know how we're doing on time. How are we doing on time? Are we good?
Yeah, Bree, we're good. I think if anyone has any questions, they can throw that in the chat. And if not, please reach out to us in the Career Center. I put Bree and I's contact information in the chat.